My name is John Hare. I'm the CEO of a company called ImmuniMed, which is a Winnipeg-based company that is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical. And the reason we can call it clinical stage biopharmaceutical is because we have one of our treatments that's now going through phase clinical trials. As a matter of fact, what that is a treatment we have against C Difficile infection that is now in phase 2 clinical trial. And that's with Health Canada. And that trial, it calls for 60 patients, and it's 2 different doses that are the choices, and that's randomly chosen as to which dose you're going to get. And we're now about halfway through that trial with 30 patients completing. And today we're going to be talking to one of those patients who has just recently completed the actual treatment. So I'd like to introduce Bernie and Lillian Falk, and Bernie is the patient in question. Bernie, if you would just explain a little bit about your circumstances as to how you came about getting C. diff and what you think caused it, and you were probably correct in what caused it. We can go from there.
Yes, I had the surgery in end of December, laser surgery, and I got some antibiotics, and I developed C. diff a couple of weeks later, and that was not very good.
Well, and it's interesting because when they gave him the antibiotics, which was to protect him against infection because of the actual surgery that he had, they actually gave him a letter, and Lillian's got the letter that they gave, and the letter actually says, to beware of it. Can you read that, Lillian?
Yeah, it says this medication may rarely cause a severe intestinal condition due to a bacteria called C. difficile. This condition may occur during treatment or weeks to months after treatment has stopped. Tell your doctor right away if you develop diarrhea that doesn't stop, abdominal or stomach pain, cramping, blood, and mucus in your stool.
Yep, and that's very typical of what C. difficile is about, and very typical about how you get it. And so, Bernie, you're the poster child for getting C. difficile. And anyway, so now from then on, you believe you got C. diff. You had to almost convince your doctors that you had it.
My wife had to work at that. Yes.
Well, and Lillian was a nurse, and so she's obviously reading the stuff that they gave her, when you got the antibiotic, and so you went back to your own doctor, or what did you do then?
Yeah, we went to the doctor one day. No, we didn't actually. We went to a walk-in. And he said, no, I don't think it's caused by the antibiotic. But the next day he was worse, so I called him again and said, would you be willing to send a stool sample for C. diff? And he said, yes, we can, but I think it'll come back negative. Well, in 4 days or so after the weekend, we got a call from his family doctor. He was positive for C. difficile.
Okay, and at that point, then they, prescribed an antibiotic again, because that's typically what they do to try to get rid of C. diff. That's the standard of care now. What they prescribed was going to be vancomycin, but Lillian interjected, which was probably wise, and suggested, you didn't want to go on the vancomycin because of there's some
side effects.
The people don't ever really ask their doctors about side effects. Luckily, Lillian is on top of it, and Bernie's got some hearing problems that apparently vancomycin might make worse. And so they then decided to give you alternatively the older standard of care, which was called Metronidazole or Flagyl. And the reason it's an older standard of care because it doesn't work very well. And so you went on that drug for 10 to 12 or 14 days? 10 days, and then got better for a little while.
A little bit, for a short while.
It was actually about 4 weeks that we could start going out and doing things. He wasn't feeling totally better, but we at least could go out a bit.
Yeah. So, and the worst part of it with C. difficile, it's what they call a spore-forming bacteria. And what happens is that the antibiotic will go after the actual bacteria, but has no effect on a spore. And if the spore then germinates after you think you're better, you'll end up with C. difficile again. And that's what's called recurrent C. diff. And I know patients that have, matter of fact, we did another interview with a patient previously. He'd recurred, and he was taking vancomycin, which was more the standard of care. He'd recurred 7 times after taking vancomycin. He would get better for about 2 weeks, and then bang, right back to the same old thing. And so you're sort of in the same boat. But okay, so now, then you were prescribed, they wanted to put you on vancomycin, and you said no, because the metronidazole hadn't worked. How did things turn out then?
Well, by then we had been in contact with you. several times, and also with Doug Friesen, and so we contacted you and you said, no, rather get in contact with, what was his name?
Neil Leroy. Neil,
yeah.
Our
so then
yeah.
he went in, had the stool sample done again the same walk-in, and this time he was very willing to send the sample, and he told me actually I'd be pretty sharp to be on top of it the first time.
Yeah.
So then he was very kind to us. We sent the stool sample in Thursday afternoon. Friday afternoon he already called with a positive.
Yeah.
And by Saturday afternoon, Bernie was already on this trial.
Yeah, so that was good. So we have a phase 2 clinical trial that's ongoing. We're recruiting patients continually right now in Canada, and mostly in our 2 centers are Winnipeg and Calgary. And matter of fact, Bernie lives out in Niverville, which is about a 30-minute drive outside of Winnipeg. And so, you know, it was lucky because a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, knew about what we were doing on the C Difficile treatment side, and obviously heard of what was, you know, Bernie's situation. So that's how we got Bernie onto the trial. Anyway, so now tell us a little about your actually taking the product and such.
Well, it worked out okay. I'm not a fan of eggs or milk, but it was mixed together. My wife mixed it for me and she made it really nice. And it wasn't too bad, you know.
And you did that twice a day for
9 days.
9 days.
9 days. As a
But
matter of fact,
after 4 days,
4 days.
he was symptom-free.
yeah, yeah. And that's typical of how it works. I mean, the one thing about antibodies, you know, in about 20% of C. diff cases, you actually can get better on your own with no antibiotic treatment. And that's basically your own immune system will actually kick in and produce the antibodies that would knock out C. diff. In our case, what we do is we produce an oral dose antibody similar to the ones you would naturally produce if you could have, you know, gotten rid of it on your own. And that's what you're taking with that, you know, with that treatment every day. And our treatment actually is 10 to 14 days. Because Bernie was doing so well after 9 days, he said, you know, I don't need to be doing this anymore. And so, and you know, the doctors that we were working with at the time agreed with that and said, you know, let's stop it. And that was back, how long ago would that have been when you finally?
How long ago?
It's been a few months now, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, one more.
His last, March the 11th.
That was the last of the.
No, actually his last medication was before that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
it will have been.
I think March 11th was your 60th day.
No, our 70th day was May the 5th.
Okay, that's right. Okay, May 5th. May 5th was the end of the was the end of the overall trial. The treatment is 10 to 14 days, but then because C. diff can recur, and it typically is within a 2-month period after taking the actual treatment, we always wait that long before we consider it a success. And so, you know, you're a success because you got past that, and meanwhile you've been symptom-free, obviously. You know, so anyway, well, and so now, you know, what we're trying to do with this is that, you know, rarely do we get a chance to actually interview somebody who's been on our trial and to give, you know, sort of his impression about doing it. And a lot of clinical trials that people do are probably a lot more onerous than what you had to go through. I mean, yes, you don't like eggs and you don't like milk. You probably didn't like C. diff either.
No. Definitely not.
So it's a lot better, but that's still a pretty simple treatment by comparison to a lot of these other trial treatments that you could otherwise get. So, you know, from a safety point of view, egg allergy would be your biggest worry. He just didn't like eggs, but that's not an allergy. And so you actually qualified. Had you said you had an allergy, you wouldn't have qualified for the trial. So,
we're grateful that we went through the trial.
Very grateful.
But, yeah,
recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, and so we're still looking for patients. If you see this video, you know, please look us up. As a matter of fact, we'll put information on the actual video itself. And Bernie and Lillian, thank you very much for doing this with us. And I'm glad to see you're healthy and stay that way.
Well, and thank you for including us in the trial. We very much appreciate it.
Good. Thanks a lot.